Greetings, one and all. Thanks for tuning in and watching my wee little channel. I wanted to do a little Gurdjieff show. I'm going to start off with a quote and then go into it a little bit. So Gurdjieff says, "Self-observation brings man to the realization of the necessity of self-change. And in observing himself, a man notices that self-observation itself brings about certain changes in his inner processes. He begins to understand that self-observation is an instrument of self-change, a means of awakening." And that's what hopefully we're trying to do with ourselves, having an awakening time, wake up to this sleepy world and life that we're living in. And he talks about self-observation in many of his books and many of his exercises. And it's something that we should be doing with ourselves. We should be observing who we are. As we know, all the old ancient mystery schools had written over the doorway as you went in, "Know thyself." That's what we're having to do. We have to learn to know ourselves, which can be a bit of a painful process when we self-observe how we're reacting to things, self-observe what we're doing, self-observe what we're thinking, self-observe what we're feeling, and self-observe the actions that we're creating with our bodies, with our limbs, our head, our eyes. You know, are you yawning at the moment that you're watching this? Self-observation of that kind of thing. That means, you know, you're not fully attuned to what's going on, or maybe you just need some fresh air in your lungs. So going over this quote, starting from the beginning, self-observation brings man to the realization of the necessity of self-change. So that's number one. We realize that we're not developed enough. You know, we're a mixture of man, number one, number two, and number three. A little bit of intelligence, a little bit of emotion, and a little bit physical, sporty types. And we've got different levels of that within each of us, depending on what kind of person you are. You know, maybe you're a very sporty person or like walking everywhere. So maybe that is, you have a higher percentage of that in your way of being, or maybe you're very emotional and caught up in emotions and not necessarily using them in a productive way or in a unproductive way. Maybe you're more of an emotional person, or maybe you're very intelligent and like a professor in a university or something. You come from an intelligent side of looking at everything, which kind of makes you, we're always a little bit more one-centered than the other. If we're not working on ourselves, we're trying to bring all them three centers together to work in harmony. So self-observation, the necessity of self-change. We need to be aware of what we're being like. You know, we have to have attention on ourselves and how we're being. And in some ways that causes quite a lot of frustrations, because you suddenly see things in yourself that you don't like. And they can be worked upon. You know, we all have things in us that we don't like. We need to kind of, we have to be clear-headed about this when we're doing it. We have to be honest with ourselves. Sincerity is a very important part of this. Who am I? Who are you? That kind of thing. What is our attention drawn to? What are we easily distracted by? Are we putting enough attention and effort into doing the work, the Gurdjieff work, capital W? Or are we easily distracted and go off and do things that aren't helping development? They might be means to life. You know, you might have to go off and pay the bills or answer an email or something. But even when you're doing them kinds of things, you should be doing them with attention, because we're learning to be awake. And to be awake, we're using our attention all the time, but we easily fall back asleep and just do things in a kind of sleepy manner, thinking we're awake, and we all know that we're not really. So continuing with this, and in observing himself, a man notices that self-observation itself brings about certain changes in his inner processes. You know, we're putting attention where one wants it. We don't want to have well, like I was saying, attention on other things. But when we're developing ourselves, we're trying to put attention into that self-observation. And sometimes we can be a bit repulsed by it, get a bit you know, there's because it's all to do with magnetic force. You're creating a magnetic force in yourself, and sometimes your magnetic force wants to repel you away from doing this work. There's something in us that doesn't want to do it, so it repels us away. It's repulsive to do this kind of work. But we know that doing this self-observation, as he says here, will bring about certain changes in our inner processes. It will we start being aware of, I'm using my intellect now, I'm thinking, trying to think when we're thinking, not feeling our thinking. So there is a part of that in the sentence, but that's a bit deeper. But, you know, let's just go through the main way of doing this at the moment, or the primal, shall I say. So every center's got 3 centers in it. So your intellect center's got an intelligence center, a emotional center, and a physical center. And your emotional center's got an intellectual center, an emotional center, and a physical center, blah, blah, blah. But we want to try and be aware of ourselves of, am I thinking? Or am I thinking with my feelings? Am I feeling and then distracting that, all my emotions, with some kind of rational thinking, putting that onto it? We need to start being aware of what it is you're thinking, feeling, and doing. You need to observe yourself in your actions in your day-to-day life and how you're reacting to people, to events and such like. But once you start this process, over time, it begins to work within you. And I know Ouspensky used to give this exercise, which is a very good one, of trying to concentrate your attention. You look at your watch, let's say for 30 seconds, and see how long you can keep your attention on that watch. You might have said 3 minutes, I can't remember now, but let's start with 30 seconds, because that helps develop the attention within you. And you're concentrating just on that, keeping your attention on the watch, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, or if it's a digital, the numbers changing, 1, 2, 3, you know. And you're developing then a force within yourself, which is an attentive force. But I strongly believe that's also part of your will, and we have to develop our will to do this self-observation upon ourselves. Will is a very important force in all this. We must will to do this. We must want to do it. We must need to do it. We must wish to do it. Otherwise, your attention will be distracted. You will start thinking about other things or noticing something else that's not that watch or clock that you're looking at. You know, there might be other things you could try looking at instead. I think the watch and clock one's a good one, because you can see numbers are changing and you're keeping with it, hopefully. Though I have heard of some people, they just take an object and look at that, or look at a flower and stare at a flower for 30 seconds, try to connect with that flower, try and connect with that watch, whatever it is you're looking at, because you're putting your attention onto it. And over time, that will help you develop, like I say, your attention and your will, so that you can be more connected with what you're doing in your life. You're more awake, you're more conscious of what's happening to yourself and what you are doing. And as Gurdjieff says here, it's kind of like an inner process that's happening with this. And then he goes on to say, he or she begins to understand that self-observation is an instrument of self-change, a means of awakening. So it's just like what I was just saying, of we're trying to put our attention where one wants it, let's say. We have to pull our attention away from less important things, pull our attention away from the thought of, oh, I'll go and watch that movie on Netflix, where instead you could be perhaps putting your attention on reading, I don't know, a Gurdjieff chapter or a book of Ouspensky or something. We find excuses all the time, and that's the repelling force in us not to do the work. But one thing that I think's important with this is a practice. We're doing a practice, a spiritual practice, and we should be doing it because we want to. So we should make the most of enjoying doing this practice, getting joy out of it. We won't get it right first time. We might not get it right the 10th time, but we should be doing it with a love, you know, unconditional love, and doing it as a practice that's joyful to you. And then when you've got a joy running through you, all of your centers want to be part of it. They want to they feel that joy and want to be involved with it. They're not being like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do my homework. Sorry, my phone's just, I knew my phone was about to buzz. In the processes working on me, but I didn't quite turn it off in time. You know, we all know sometimes when someone's going to call us, don't we? That's inner processes working on ourselves. And we're just in that moment, it's probably perhaps a little bit of a telepathic thing as well. But that's an inner development, which we should all be working towards. You know, and all this is helping in not just to strengthen your will, it also strengthens your soul. And all this work is soul development. We're trying to develop our souls to be a fully conscious, awakened essence inside ourselves. So this is why the self-observation exercises are discussed lots in Gurdjieff's books and in Spencer's books and in all these record of meetings and views from the real world. People are often asking, and the Paris meetings and such like, etc., etc. People are often coming back to the question of self-observation. Not necessarily self-remembering. I think Gurdjieff sometimes that the English like to take self-remembering too far, but self-observation of ourselves will definitely help you with strengthening your soul and developing yourself and creating that will and that attention inside yourselves to have the intention to do this work. So with love and joy, I say thank you for watching. And hopefully, let me just read that quote one more time without interrupting it so that we've all got it going on in our heads, hearts, souls. Self-observation brings man to the realization of the necessity of self-change. And in observing himself, a man notices that self-observation itself brings about certain changes in his inner processes. He begins to understand that self-observation is an instrument of self-change, a means of awakening. So from one truth seeker to another, thank you for watching. Peace be upon all your souls. Go forward with joy and love.